I remember thinking with probably 20 minutes to go, okay, I'm in a good chance for a medal here. Let's just make sure I secure a medal spot. I really didn't know where the other athletes were. I don't like to look back in races. I just don't know how that could be beneficial when either you look back, there's someone on your tail and you panic, or you look back and you've got, plenty of room and you might get a bit comfortable. So I just thought, look ahead, just squeeze everything out of myself. So it was just quite a shock and an emotional, I guess, journey down that home straight, realizing that I was about to win gold.
Hey, welcome to the Bodies Built Better podcast. I'm your host, Jackie Tan, and firstly, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you. And if you're listening for the first time, welcome. This show is all about human performance. Whether you're running your first marathon, running a PB in a marathon, or wanting to show up as your best self every single day, this show is for you. I chat with experts, athletes, coaches, and authors on all the tips, tools, and strategies to help you get the best from yourself. We explore the body's incredible ability to heal, adapt, and evolve so you can crush limitations, reconnect your body and mind, and discover your extraordinary potential. And today on the show, I chat with two-time Olympian, three-time Commonwealth Games marathoner and gold medalist, Jessica Stenson nee Trengove. And to say I was excited about this conversation is an understatement. Jess is Adelaide running royalty, but you would never know it with the way she carries herself. If she's not running on the world stage, you'll find her at her local running events around Adelaide or around the country, either competing or supporting those that are racing. Jess gave birth to a beautiful little boy, Billy, back in 2019, and in less than 24 months, she ran a marathon PB at the Perth Marathon. Then, of course, recently at the Birmingham Commonwealth Games, she ran a gutsy race to finish first with the gold. And not only was that incredible, but she also goes down in the history books, becoming the first female athlete to win 3 Commonwealth Marathon medals and as Australia's first female Commonwealth Games Marathon champion since the late Kerryn McCann. I loved chatting with Jess, and I know you'll enjoy this conversation as she recounts her experience and gold medal run at the Commonwealth Games. Enjoy. Jess, thank you so much for chatting with me today. Welcome to the Bodies Built Better podcast.
Thank you. No, I'm excited to chat today. Looking forward to it.
It is so awesome to be chatting with you. You are like royalty here in Adelaide, especially since your incredible run at the Commonwealth Games. Congratulations on gold.
Thank you. Yeah, it really was an incredible experience. Just the whole month away, we were training in St. Moritz for 3 weeks prior to the game. So we sort of arrived in Birmingham feeling as though we'd really filled our cups there. And then, that experience in Birmingham was just something really special to top it off.
Well, I mean, as someone who watched it, firstly, you looked incredible, like so strong throughout. And I mean, there wasn't a doubt in my mind, like a gold, absolutely. But, you said you're in St. Moritz for 3 weeks. And the thing that that is really interesting to me is the behind the scenes and everything it takes, leading up to it and then obviously during race day. So I'd actually really love to start there at St. Moritz.
Sure.
What is the strategy behind going there for the 3 weeks and how do you prep leading into the games?
Yeah, well, look, I guess altitude training is something that I've tried and tested before. So prior to having Billy at the end of 2019, I actually had been on a few altitude camps at Flagstaff in Arizona over in the States, and then at St. Moritz in 2017 prior to the World Champs Marathon in London. So for that particular event, I did 21 days and came down like off the mountain about 4 days prior to the race. And I felt that worked really well. Something with altitude training to consider is that you can sort of hit a bit of a rough patch where you're adjusting. Obviously, the idea behind it is that you have less oxygen in the air, and that prompts your body to develop more red blood cells to help with your oxygen carrying capacity. But while your body goes through that adjustment phase, it can actually be a bit detrimental to performance for a while. So you either tend to race straight after coming off the mountain or about 3 weeks afterwards, to just avoid that awkward patch where your body's adjusting. So I chose to race straight off the mountain. So I followed the same protocol this year as I had followed in 2017. And it's a big decision, particularly when you've got a young family, to travel to a place like that is obviously, I think, one of the most beautiful locations in the world, and I know how motivated I feel when I get there, but it's an expensive place as well. So Dylan and I had some chats and thought, look, if we really want to give myself the best chance of performing well, we want to do it, and we want to do it as a family, because I would have found it hard going up there for 3 weeks on my own. So it was just really cool that Dylan and Billy could be there. Eloise and Sinead, my marathon teammates, they were there with their families too. And there was a good vibe there. And we got some good training in. And I guess the hard part is holding back when you're starting your taper and you've got so many beautiful trails that you want to go and explore.
Exactly.
You have to be disciplined and stick to the program, but that's a good problem to have, wanting to run more. So
yeah, that's it. So when you arrived in Birmingham, what was that? Was it a day before race day or?
So I sort of, following the same protocol as 2017, arrived on the Tuesday for a Saturday race.
Okay.
So yeah, around 4 days beforehand, which gave me enough time to just, settle into the village. And there was quite a bit of travel involved. We caught a 3.5 hour train from St. Moritz to Zurich, and then a flight to London, and then drove 2.5 hours to Loughborough/Birmingham. The boys were staying in Loughborough, so that was a big day of travel. So you wouldn't want to do that the day before the race.
Yeah, absolutely. When you arrived in Birmingham, like as athletes, how far in advance do you get to know what the course is like? And then once you know what the course is like, hills, undulation, does that change your strategy going into it?
It does. So we were aware that the Birmingham course would be quite undulating. It was difficult to tell from the elevation map just how undulating it would be, because, depending on the metrics that the map uses, they could look more severe or less severe. And it was a bit tricky for us to determine just how severe those hills were going to be. So we sort of took the map into account, tried to run some hillier long runs in St. Moritz, and then it wasn't until we arrived in Birmingham that we could drive a part of the course and we got to really see what those hills looked like. So there was about 300 meters of total elevation, and we started with an 18-kilometer loop, which we did twice, and that just had pretty gentle uphill and then more severe downhill sections. But it was the final 5-6 Ks of the race which we didn't get to see beforehand. They weren't allowing cars onto that part of the course. So that was a bit of a surprise. We knew that it would be somewhat hilly, and then when we were sitting in the cool room on race day watching the wheelchair athletes navigating those hills, we just we suddenly realized how sharp some of them were. So I was prepared for it, but I just hadn't seen it before in the flesh.
Wow. And I'd love to know, during all this prep, you did mention Dylan, at the 3 weeks in St. Moritz. What's his role in all of this during your time arriving into Birmingham?
Yeah, Dylan played a vital role. He always does. He's one of my greatest supporters, and he has a lot of belief and has a way of, making me just feel composed going into a race. And so because he's a runner himself, he understands what it takes to be at your best, and that's not just getting the training done, but getting adequate sleep, nutrition. Our toddler was quite keen to be carried in St. Moritz, and Dylan was doing the heavier lifting so that I didn't stir up my back. And yeah, he was just fantastic. And when I lined up to race, I was doing it for, my loved ones as well, including Dylan and Billy. And I think when you're out there running for a bigger purpose, it definitely gives you an edge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I read in your blog that you guys had had a chat and he'd warned you that to see you at the hardest part of the marathon, it could sacrifice seeing you finish. How did that conversation come about?
I mean, he asked me a few days beforehand where I'd like him to stand. And I said, well, typically I find that, 25 to 35K, somewhere in there, I generally go through a pretty tough patch. It was hard to know with this course where exactly that tough patch would be. But he worked out that if he stayed around this particular park, he could see me at 4 and 5Ks, 20 and 21Ks, and then that 33, 34K mark. So that's where he chose to be. But it was quite 7Ks away from the finish line. So he wasn't sure how we'd get there, but he said, we'll find a way to get there eventually. And as it turned out, the Channel 7 crew happened to be there with him. And so they had a van and they drove Dylan and Billy to as close as they could to the finish line. And then they ran like crazy through the crowds to get there, I think within a minute of me finishing. So Dylan said Billy was just in hysterics as they were running through. The cameraman was lugging this big camera around.
And that's so awesome because we were watching it and we're like, is he going to make it as well? And then with, you coming through the finish line and that was awesome to see as well. Cameramen were like as much focused on you as they were on him, making sure that he was there.
Yeah, and look, I am so glad they were there at that 33, 34K mark because I specifically remember seeing them and getting a bit of a lift and, that fueled me for the next little part of the race. So I appreciated that, they might miss the finish, which they wouldn't have wanted to do either, just to help me get through that section of the race.
Yeah. What was your mindset at the start line?
I was really trying not to think too much about the outcome. Going into this games, I had people saying, well, you've got 2 bronze medals. Obviously, you want to make it a different color. And I just felt that mindset would create pressure that would be unhelpful. So instead, I was thinking about let's just execute the race plan that my coach has given me, focus on, 1 5K sort of section at a time and really not think about the result. And consequently, I sort of got to the final 5 kilometers of the race and I was really focusing on just, getting up one hill at a time because it was all a bit of a surprise. We'd turn one corner and I'd think, what's coming up here? And, there's a bit of a camber on the road. Let's run here. So I was thinking about my footing and my posture. And it wasn't until I really got onto that final, I don't know, might have been 100-meter straight where I could see the finish line that I realized
I'm good now.
that the gold medal was really within my reach. I remember thinking with probably 20 minutes to go, okay, I'm in a good chance for a medal here. Let's just make sure I secure a medal spot. I really didn't know where the other athletes were. I don't like to look back in races. I just don't know how that could be beneficial when either you look back, there's someone on your tail and you panic, or you look back and you've got, plenty of room and you might get a bit comfortable. So I just thought, look ahead, just squeeze everything out of myself. So it was just quite a shock and an emotional, I guess, journey down that home straight, realizing that I was about to win gold.
Yeah. And it was such a beautiful moment as well. I've never seen an athlete do this before, running down the straight, engaging with the crowd, but also thanking everyone. Beautiful.
I think that's partly due to the nature of races over the past couple of years. There haven't been many people around. COVID really restricted crowd capacity, and I wasn't sure coming into this Commonwealth Games whether it was going to be well supported, whether there would be crowds. We just had no idea. So to arrive and to see that the locals had shown up and there were just the noise and the energy was insane. I just was so so happy.
Yeah.
So they definitely deserve those thank yous, because it makes such a difference to the athletes running to have that noise and support out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, like the cambered sections as well. When you're in a race, what are the things that you're taking into account that us as spectators have no idea that do help you, I guess, conserve energy?
So I was trying to stay on the flattest sections of the road, and sometimes it's not always the most direct route, but I think if you're running for too long on a camber, it can, you know, put too much stress on one side of your body that will backfire later on. On a hot day, you'd be looking for shaded sections of the course. You're thinking about tucking in to protect yourself from the wind. Nutrition plays a really big role, making sure you're in a good position to be able to grab your bottle that generally has an energy gel strapped to it to be able to, you know, see out your nutrition plan, which I come up with a sports dietitian, and it's something that I've tried and tested. And so generally it's similar from marathon to marathon, but if it's a hotter day, you might be trying to take on more fluid, or um, there are a lot of little factors that you've got to plan for depending on the course and the conditions. And yeah, other than that, I think it's just about knowing what the purpose of the race is. So I'll sometimes line up for a marathon with the idea of needing to run a particular time to try and qualify for a major championship. And in that type of race, I just want to try and hit the same splits every kilometre. So Perth Marathon last year, that was my intention. Whereas in this race, I was there just to race the race. I didn't look at my watch at all. I had no idea what splits we were hitting. It was just about getting a feel for the race, settling in, and as I said, executing that plan that my coach had given me.
What was that plan?
So, because the course, we had those two 18-kilometre loops to begin with, from about 36 kilometres onwards. I mean, that's the final 5K section was quite hilly, but there was this little sort of 3K strip before we hit that final hilly section where it was flat. And that's where my coach sort of said, I'd like you to make moves there if you're going to make them. He said from 28 to 30 Ks onwards, you can start to wind up the pace, get going along that strip. And then in the final hilly section, so from, let's say, 36 37Ks onwards, I want you just to really hold on and stay strong. It's going to be hilly. It's going to be hard. You don't want to be having to chase someone down or, make a big move there. So that's what I did I think it was around 30Ks. I just started to get in the zone of let's start to roll the pace along here. And I think by 34Ks, I was starting to push a bit harder. And then by the time I hit that 36, 37K mark, I wasn't, the hills were doing the work. I was just holding on, as Adam had said. So I guess the mantra we'd come up with was be patient and smart in the first third, middle third, be brave. You can start to make some moves, and then be strong in the final section. So they're the words that I had on my hand.
Brilliant. And I did read your blog, and you'd said at the 7K mark, the pace had slowed significantly. When something dramatic like that happens, what goes through your mind? Are you just going with the flow? Do you stick to a strategy? Like, how does that affect you?
So within a strategy, you do need to have flexibility to read the play a bit. And I like to run a more even race. I think generally the Aussie girls, and we were out there working together as much as we could. That was what we all were hoping for. So when it suddenly stalled, there was a bit of chatter amongst us, and I think we decided just to try and continue at that even pace, and the rest of the pack would either follow or they wouldn't. So, if the girls at the front did stall it, we'd go around and try to keep things moving so that you're not just doing a fartlecky style race.
Yeah, and basically dictated to someone else's strategy as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So tell us about your friendship with Elsie and Sinead?
Hmm. So Elsie, I think we first met probably in 2010. We'd raced each other just prior to that, but I went up to Falls Creek over that Christmas, New Year period, and I actually remember one of my teammates rolled his ankle on a run, and Elsie and her husband had a bike out. We were on this trail, kind of in the middle of nowhere, and her husband sort of gave him a dinky ride back up to the cars and helped him out because his ankle was in a pretty bad way. And they were so helpful that day. And I ended up being in a car with Elsie back to Melbourne and got to know her then. And I was absolutely starstruck. She was one of my running idols, and she still is. And then we got to know each other at a deeper level in 2014 when we went, 2012, when we went to the London Olympics together. We were sharing a room in 2014. She was a new mum competing at the Commonwealth Games. And I remember seeing her hugging her daughter Indy after training and thinking, gee, that'd be the dream, coming away with your family to an event like this. And then we went to the Rio Olympics together, and then were roommates at the World Champs in 2017. So our friendship goes back a long way. And then Sinead, I met for the first time in 2015. So she got into the sport a bit later, and she's such a genuine, just fun person. I mean, the three of us, just when we decided to set our sights on the Commonwealth Games, said we need to prepare together beforehand. Like, this is a great opportunity. And to be honest, when I was unsure of whether the Commonwealth Games this year was something I wanted to aim towards, because I'd had an injury in January that got me down, and there were also the World Championships only a few weeks earlier that making a decision between the two events, it was the opportunity to run and be on a team with Sinead and Elsie that really drew me towards the Commonwealth Games. So I'm so glad I made that decision.
Yeah, and what an experience. And also, I mean, you mentioned even at the end of the race, when you were being interviewed, that Elsie came to your rescue
Yeah.
with that caffeinated gel.
Gel. Yeah, so that was a point, well, sort of halfway through the race. Unfortunately, my backup gel that I'd popped down my crop top slipped out at 10 Ks and bounced along the road. And I thought, well, hopefully I won't need that backup gel. And sure enough, I did. And so when I looked around and, I didn't have my gel or my bottle, Elsie said I wasn't planning to use my gel. She just had one strapped to her bottle in case. She said, have my gel, and we both use the same brand. And so I guess that really consolidated the fact that we were out there as a team trying to help each other get the best out of each other and ourselves, and that meant a lot to me. And I think just that team feel helped me to perform at my best that day.
Yeah, absolutely. And when those split second things don't go your way, how what goes through your mind? If Elsie isn't there, that backup gel isn't there, what do you tell yourself?
I mean, there's always another station fight that's 5 kilometers away, but I really do put a lot of emphasis on my nutrition, the carb load going into the race, and then the race day nutrition. And it probably would have been okay, and I would have just had to tell myself either I can go back and get my gel and lose a lot of distance and time, or I can push on to the 25-kilometer mark. And I'll never know what the outcome would have been if I'd made one of those choices. But I think the best option was, being able to get one at that 20K mark, should I say. And yeah.
How did you celebrate your gold medal?
Well, we had that night, my family and Elsie's family and Sinead's family all went out with my coach and some friends for burgers and a few ciders and then ice cream later on.
Perfect.
And Elsie at one point chucked me in her toddler's pram and took me for a ride around the street.
I've seen footage of that. Did you post that on your Instagram? or something.
Yeah, I think she put something up. And look, I guess it was a fairly tame celebration, but after a marathon, like you don't want to be doing much.
That's true. Oh, that's brilliant. Just let's rewind a bit. Obviously, back in 2019, you had Billy, and then less than 24 months later, you run a PB at Perth Marathon in October last year. And that's in itself incredible because you were running off or coming off a bone stress. Then
Mm.
you've come off with gold at the Commonwealth Games. Since having Billy and becoming a mother, has something changed besides the obvious, within you, the physical strength, the mental strength? Like, is there something that's changed within you, do you think?
Yeah, and it's hard to pinpoint. I'll say first of all that having other mums come back to sport and performing at their best inspired me and gave me the belief that I could do it. So I'm very thankful for that. And so I never really doubted that I'd get back to sport and running in some capacity. And that belief really does help a lot. So I kind of, it was difficult to get a marathon opportunity. I think I planned to run one in Hamburg in early 2020, and that's when the world came to a halt with COVID, and that race was cancelled. And subsequently, I didn't get to run a marathon in 2020, and then in early 2021, when I planned to run a local one in Sydney, I got my first sort of significant injury post childbirth. And then it got to the end of 2021 because Gold Coast was cancelled, and it was quite difficult for me to get into races overseas because I hadn't run a marathon since the end of 2018. So my marathon options were limited. And so when the Perth opportunity came up, I was really excited, and I just went out there with such a free mind. There was sort of no pressure or expectation. I think the mental side of becoming a parent has really benefited me. I don't reflect too much on past sessions. I don't get too nervous about future sessions. I just go out there and I do feel free. At home, you've got a lot of demands, and when you go out and run, you can think about whatever you want, and it's just a different mental approach, I guess. You see it as a real privilege. And then physically, I've been on the oral contraceptive pill basically my whole running career, and then came off it, and then I had that breastfeeding year, and then I haven't been on it since. And so my hormone profile has changed dramatically, and that comes with some challenges with timing and everything of your cycle, but I feel like I can just feel more, and I feel stronger as a result. So that's been a really interesting journey as well. And then I think just, there possibly are some physiological changes to do with, I don't know, your strength, your blood plasma volume. I don't really know the ins and outs of what happens when you become a mum, but I believe there are some changes that occur that possibly do improve your endurance capacity. So all of that, I think, comes together. And if you can get the training done despite the logistical challenges of being a parent,
Yeah.
organizing care, the child illnesses that can impact you sometimes. You're just getting ready for a race and gastro goes through the household.
Yeah.
They do make it quite challenging, but I generally feel that mums have the capacity to be stronger and fitter after childbirth.
Yeah. And I'd love to touch on the menstrual cycle for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you're, back into normal, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
for want of a better word. So do you use or do you train to your cycle or?
No, so I guess it was interesting. So I had a half marathon on the Gold Coast exactly a month before Birmingham, and my cycle started sort of basically in that race. And you get the whatever the symptoms are, they're different for every person, but I kind of get the achy back and I just feel a bit average in, those few hours before it comes. And I feel that maybe impacted my result a bit that day, but I knew that it was going to happen a month later in Birmingham. And at that point, I didn't want to try interfering with my cycle, using anything artificial. So I just thought, I've got to hope that because I'm changing time zones, that day lag will mean that it will come before the race, not on the race. And it did.
And it did.
So the Friday before the race, it started, and I've read that can be when you're at your strongest, when the cycle starts, the progesterone and estrogen levels drop. Exactly. So I just kept telling myself that.
That's right. Superwoman on the day. That's brilliant.
So I was a bit fortunate there, because I think it would have rattled me a bit if I knew that it might happen again during the race, just because, it's hard to avoid feeling a bit average at that, moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And how important is it to even have that knowledge of what happens throughout the cycle to get you through as well?
Yeah.
Knowing that, it's good for you. It's not a problem.
And I do feel that knowledge is power. I ummed and ahed about whether I should read too much into it, knowing that, that was somewhat out of my control. And what I decided is, by reading into it and understanding that when your estrogen levels are high, it's a little bit harder to, I guess, deal with the heat. And I think there's some changes that occur around your ability to burn carbs. And I thought, if I can learn as much about it, I might be able to tweak my hydration and nutrition plan and my cooling strategy accordingly.
Yes.
So, yes.
Amazing work. Tell us about your comeback. So you've had Billy. How long before you got back into training? And then how long was it before you thought, and I know we had 2020 process, but how long do you then go, well, now I'm going to start my campaign to compete?
So because of the timing of the Olympics, I planned to try and qualify for them. I knew that it was a big and sort of daunting goal, and I thought I might as well just have a go if I feel up to it, utilising a fair bit of cross training, which I'm pretty familiar with now as a method to prepare for marathons due to some injuries I've had. So I think I had a C-section. Billy was in breech, and so I was aware for quite a few weeks that would probably be, the form of delivery that we'd be going with. So I think 4.5 or so weeks afterwards, I saw my women's health physio, and she did an internal assessment and sort of said, look, from my end, everything's sort of fine here. It's just about respecting the wound healing. And so I got back on the elliptical at that point, and I was going for some walks. I was really, my measure of whether I'd done too much was if my my wound became swollen, like I'd get a bit puffy around there. So that was, and obviously like bleeding as well. So I'd go for walks and would sort of just use that as my gauge. And then by 6 weeks, I could go for some relaxed jogs, and I was feeling good. I'm just trying to think. It would have been maybe 12 weeks I started to do some little reps with, some sort of pace, but it was really nice. I think just it was a clean slate. I had, a blank canvas, should I say. There were no preconceived ideas or expectations. I wasn't comparing to my old splits. I just thought, let's put something on it here, and then I can just keep raising the bar. And I thought that was a good mindset to have, not thinking about, pre-pregnancy sessions. Yeah, it was just like, let's celebrate every improvement as it comes. And, by 6 months post, I feel like I got myself into a, fit and strong position, but I've got no idea what my, result would have been, because I never ended up running a marathon. But I actually felt like we'd done it in a really measured and safe way. So I think reading your body, and that's my philosophy as a coach as well. I find it hard to give set paces and heart rates. I just love, running to feel. I think it's a
Yes.
good way to go about things.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us about, I mean, you said yourself you've had some injuries. Tell us about the injuries postpartum, and
Mm-hmm.
then, and I recently heard you said, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can no longer run past that 150, 170 kilometer a week
Mm.
mark.
Well, I don't feel like I need to. So I just think now that I've done sort of 14 marathons and you think of all of the preparations involved, I've got that training in the bank. And so I think I capped, well, my biggest week of mileage prior to Birmingham was 169, and I think I did 2 weeks at 165, and everything was lower than that. That felt really sufficient, and I feel like my quality of training has increased versus 2018. I probably 180 k's up to even 200 was what I expected of myself in a marathon prep. So I do like to add in a bit more cross training now as well. I think when I did that 169k week, I wouldn't have done any cross training in there. But when I'm sitting at around 150 k's a week, I probably have maybe an elliptical session, maybe a bit of a water running session in there as well. And I'm just really quick now if I have a bit of a niggle to say, okay, let's jump on the elliptical instead. So I think the first injury I had postpartum was in Feb of 2021. So that was about 12, 14, 15 months after giving birth. And in that scenario, I was wearing the super shoes for the first time, and I had had a bout of gastro before a race. So I think I just burnt the candle at both ends energy wise, and I was trying new shoes. And then I had a series of injuries following that one. I think I just found it hard to build up a good base again because I was just chasing race opportunities. They'd get cancelled and then I'd chase the next
Next
one.
one.
I didn't really find a good patch or big 12-week block where I could just build up gradually. I was just trying to grab whatever opportunity I could.
Yeah. And so with the cross training, have you found that that you feel better when you have more cross training with your running as opposed to 200 or the
Mm.
170 kilometers a week of running? Is there a difference that you've found in terms of how you feel?
I feel like I can go to my sessions feeling fresher and ready to take them on versus, okay, I'm just here to tick the box today. Like
Yeah.
the cross training is a different stimulus. I don't think it's an easier stimulus necessarily. I can really feel particularly on my elliptical, I'm using my posterior chain muscles, my glutes, and I can really feel them working. Whereas running, it's often a bit more calf, quad, dominant for me, and I can feel like I'm really just dragging my feet on those, second run, the recovery jogs. In the elliptical sessions, I feel like I'm actually getting a bit of a strength benefit that I wouldn't from my running. So that's where I do wonder, even if I could run, do 200 kilometers a week, I actually think it may not be as effective as the running plus a bit of cross training.
So in hindsight, you could potentially say the injuries are a blessing in disguise, a
Yeah.
silver lining.
Oh, you learn so much from them. In the
Yeah.
moment, they're heartbreaking. You've
Yeah,
been working
absolutely.
really hard towards something.
Yeah.
As I said, in for January of this year when I got the injury, I just thought far out. This is my second femoral stressy in 12 months, and I'd had the sacral bit of bone stress prior to Perth. I thought, this is my body telling me I just need a rest. Should I take it? The Commonwealth Games are coming up this year and the World Champs. What should I do? And I just wanted a glass ball, but ended up speaking to a couple of mentors. And I remember one particular session, we wrote down my priorities and values and sort of teased everything apart. And it just seemed right to go for the Com Games. And so that, I guess, decision just kept me motivated in my cross training and return from injury. And I'd been feeling a bit confused prior to that, but once I set my mind to something, and if Dylan's really, he embraces that decision as well, I just feel like I can really focus on it. And I definitely think the people who are going to be there at that championship attracted me to it as well, that opportunity to run with the girls. So
yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that load, we're not just talking about training load now, but you are a mum, and you do have a toddler to look after, and I guess sleep is not quite the same as it used to be. How do you manage it all together?
Yeah, well, Dylan and his on season is sort of the summer, the track season, and mine's
Yeah.
generally more the winter. So whoever's the athlete in focus at the time, they get to
Toddler
stay
duties.
in bed when the other one gets up to our toddler.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the other load to consider is your work outside of training. I mean, I made the decision not to get back to physio clinic work so that I could focus on, motherhood and training and some of my other pursuits. So some online running coaching, and I'm doing a bit of mentoring and speaking, and expanding my skills there, because I found the clinic hours, it is a bit physically demanding, but also, mentally you've got to be so switched on. And that's a family, decision as well that can be challenging because you suddenly don't have a reliable income. It's just little bits here and there. So that's where Dylan's been so supportive as well, because I guess running isn't one of those sports where in your best years of competing you're kind of earning your best income. It's probably more the opposite. When you're really focusing on running, you don't have that steady income. So he's been very supportive on all fronts there, and I think just having that flexibility has really helped me as well, just to be able to recover, because it's full on with your toddler running around after them. And when I was injured, I found that particularly challenging, not being able to chase after Billy when he, took off with his bike. And
When you look back over your career, what has been the most challenging moment for you?
that's a really good question. It was probably my first bone stress injury in 2014 before the Commonwealth Games. I'd run 2 marathons in 2012, one in 2013. So I'd run 4 marathons prior to that point. And to prepare for them, I'd just run. I'd never had to cross train. And I love running because I love the outdoors, the interaction with my teammates, and just, yeah, being out amongst nature. So to have that injury and know that the Commonwealth Games were, I think that were 3 or 4 months away, suddenly I was, in the gym just looking at a white wall on an elliptical. I was trying to do a bit of boxing. I was in a dark shed on the rowing ergo. I wasn't enjoying it, and I didn't really believe that training was going to prepare me well for a marathon. And I just remember questioning everything and wondering whether I'd ever run properly again. First bone stress injury. I thought, what if I've lost this sport forever? A bit dramatic now in hindsight, but that's how I felt at the time.
That's it.
And so, yeah, my family support during that time really helped me to get to the start line. And I ended up running what was a personal best at the time in that race. And that was my first Commonwealth Games bronze medal. And after that, I guess, experience, I realized how rewarding the result is when you've had challenges in the lead up. But I also learned that you can prepare for a marathon in so many different ways. So, and the power of the mind. So that was I learned a lot of valuable lessons in that 2014 year.
Yeah, absolutely. Really changed the mentality around training.
For sure.
And so on the flip side, what's been the most proudest moment for you?
It's hard to go past Birmingham. It just
Yeah. I know, I thought there was a bit of an obvious one, but I threw it in there anyway.
And until that day, I mean, 2018 Commonwealth Games was a really difficult race for me to finish. I hit the wall at about 37 Ks, and I had to draw upon every ounce of strength and every bit of crowd support to get to the finish line that day. So from that perspective, the Gold Coast 2018 Com Games was a really proud moment. And Birmingham, it was just such a it's hard to put it into words just how satisfied I felt and fulfilled when I crossed the line. It had just been all of my learnings to that point, the people who had supported me, throughout my whole career, and becoming a mom. And yeah, like my mum and dad had their challenges in 2021. My dad had some health issues, which just made that year really tough for us. And again, was a bit of a perspective shifter, and all of that just sort of came together. And I remember seeing some footage when I was having an interview with, a couple of journalists from Channel 7. They showed me the TV footage of my parents back at home at the pub, and their reaction when I'd crossed the line. And I just remember bursting into tears. I was so happy that it brought so much happiness to my loved ones as well.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Jess, who do you look up to?
Oh, I mean, I've mentioned my family a lot there. I really do look up to them. My mum and dad have always shown me, I guess, they are very grateful for life, and they just embrace every opportunity. They're hardworking, and they're very kind and caring, nurturing. And my brother and sister, they both had sporting dreams that, they pursued, and seeing them achieving their sporting dreams really inspired me to take running as, I guess, take it to the highest level I possibly could. I went through a bit of a patch at the age of 2021 where I wasn't really sure what I wanted to be doing. I was playing a lot of netball and wasn't really progressing there. And when my brother got drafted to the AFL, and my sister, she was rowing at the time for the Sports Institute, I really just saw their work ethic and drive and what they'd achieved, and that spurred me on to give running a red hot go. I look up to a lot of people, to be honest. People of all sort of levels. And, I coach parents who are juggling so much, and I look up to them in what they're able to balance and achieve. And then I look up to people like, an Ash Barty, who you can just tell she's a really good person off the court as well. And I guess as you get older, you value the person,
Yes.
as well as the athlete. So
Yeah. I totally understand that as well. Obviously, as a massage therapist, or, as yourself as a physiotherapist, seeing so many people as well come through and their different stories of, the trials and tribulations that they're going through. And it really does help bring perspective back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I love is seeing someone come in who's tentatively, signed up for, say, we've got the City Bay Fun Run coming up, like a 12K, and they've got a bit of knee pain, and you sort of support them through, and you catch up with them after the event, and they're just like, that was amazing. All right, beaming, I'm doing a half marathon. And I just love that running can bring so much to people's lives. They have this one goal, and it ends up turning into this lifetime, hobby.
Exactly. Sensational. Jess, you are a woman of all talents. We've just said you're a physiotherapist. You're obviously a gold medal marathon runner. You have a business, Rundies.
Yeah.
and you're a pretty talented artist, by the way, which I just found out recently.
I just love drawing animals, really. That's
dogs.
People's dogs.
I think it's a great way to just be around dogs. Yeah. It's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
But in terms of your business, how did that start amongst everything that you've got going on? And what's the vision for that?
It's a funny one. So in 2015, I remember just telling my now husband that I was really frustrated that I couldn't find these favorite running undies I had. I couldn't find them anywhere. And we were chatting a bit more, and with my brother as well, who was playing AFL in Speedos under his footy shorts. And we thought, gee, there's an opportunity here to make, create underwear that are suitable for athletes. Rundies was a kind of catchy name. And so we started by getting the business side of things set up. And my husband, he's sort of in that engineering project management space. So he brought those skills in, and then I kind of was doing a lot of running and new runners, and we got in touch with Running Mums Australia and worked out what they'd like to see in underwear, and then my brother's in sort of finance business, so we all had different skills to bring to the table, and we started up Rundy's business. And look, it's really just been a hobby that ticks away in the background, but we do, when the time is right, hope to really grow it. It's just something that's been we literally package it from home and send it off, and so when times are busy, it's hard. Our capacity to do that side of things is lowered, but I think this year or next year we'll try and put some more emphasis into the business. And it's really nice. It gives us the opportunity to meet members of the running community when we do have a bit of a stall at events. You get to catch up with people, and you can give back to the sport we love through donating prizes and that sort of thing. So
I have to ask, so what's the conversation that you had with runners where you're like, so I have a question about your undies?
We did a survey, an anonymous survey.
All right.
And it was like, what colours would you like? What styles? And the thing I find most awkward is when, you're having a conversation with someone, of the other gender, and you're like, okay, yep, we'll send you some. Just a question, what size do I send out?
Oh, brilliant. Jess, what's coming up for you? Have you got Fitzy's 5 on the weekend and then City Bay? You're doing those?
Yes, yep. Fitzy's 5 will be my first race since the marathon, and that'll wake up the legs. And then City Bay 2 weeks after that. I'm not quite sure whether I'll do the 12 or the half yet there, but I'm really looking forward to City Bay. It's been brilliant. A long time since the last one.
It has, yeah, because last year got cancelled.
Yep, and I didn't do 2019 because I was pregnant, so I haven't done City Bay since Actually, no, I was away in 2018 as well. I was overseas, so 2017 was my last City Bay fun run, and I love the atmosphere out there, and it's something that a lot of South Australians can relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us about the New York Marathon.
Yeah, so it's an event that I've never done before, but I've been wanting to do for about a decade. So I'm really looking forward to New York, and that'll be my brother's first marathon. He's training for it by playing footy at the moment, so we'll see how he goes. But
is there a plan to run together the entire way, or?
No, we probably won't run together. He I don't even know where he'll start. He's running it with the Little Heroes Foundation. That's right. I think people get funneled off, I've heard, on different sections of the course. So we'll have to organise a meeting spot afterwards.
Yeah, have to be pretty specific. Gosh, who knows what it's going to be like, but if Birmingham is anything to go from, it'll be nuts over there. It'll be incredible.
Yes.
Jess, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for your time. If people want to, if they happen not to be following you, where can they find you? And if they want to get a pair of rundies, how can they do that?
Well, it's just rundies.com.au. That one's easy. And then my Instagram it's my maiden name, so @Jess_Tren. And I've got a Facebook page. I'm not sure what that is. It's probably Jessica Trengove.
Something like that.
Yeah. I think it's hard to change your name on there. So it is generally all in my maiden name still. Yeah.
Brilliant. Jess, generally I'd love to finish off these podcasts with a question that can give our listeners an action or a goal to work towards. So my question for you is, for those out there who have been out of training and competing for whatever reason, whether that's injury or pregnancy, or they've just decided to take some time away from their sport, what is your advice for them getting back into training with the right mindset and staying injury free?
It's probably what I said earlier. Think of a blank canvas and you're just building up from there. So you kind of set the benchmark and then you're just looking at progressing and celebrating progression. There'll be a point where you get back into some consistent training and then you feel really fatigued because you're just starting to absorb that training load again. So don't expect every week to feel better than the last, but patience is the key, and just looking at personal progress. And I think giving yourself a pat on the back and celebrating those little milestones, because that's really motivating. And I think, obviously mindset is a big part of it as well.
Yeah, amazing. Jess, you're incredible. Thank you so much for your time today, and all the best for New York and Paris 2024.
Thank you. It's been great to chat. Thanks, Jackie.
That was Jessica Stenson, Trengove, on her incredible Commonwealth gold medal run. I always love hearing runners' experiences on their own runs and on their own races and how they felt, and to get an insight into Jess's gold medal victory was truly awesome. If you liked this episode, please share it with your friends, subscribe to the podcast, because that helps us get to more and more people who would love this episode too. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. Have the best day, week, month, and year. And here's to a world of bodies built better.